Hey, good evening, coffee and chatter. I got Thomas Jefferson on the mind here. I'm a little ticked off as well. They got to me this time. It involves the New York City Council. These mental midgets up there are having a problem with a 188-year-old statue of Thomas Jefferson in the city council room that's getting their panties in a wad. Now, before I get to that, I just want to talk a little about Thomas Jefferson. Admittedly, I didn't learn enough about the founders, especially Thomas Jefferson, um, as a school student. Why? Well, I don't know. I guess I was partly to blame, but I guess I blame my teachers too. It probably I've learned a lot more about him now, and I got a lot of respect for the man. I don't think we'd be where we're at today as a country if it wasn't for him. I believe he was probably one of the guiding lights. I mean, look, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, all great men, arguably among the greatest. And they each had their own serious flaws. Now, can anyone argue that Thomas Jefferson, an intellectual giant, doesn't stand in that circle? Possibly at the head. And he had flaws, yet we're now reaching the pinnacle of madness. We're ready to jettison Thomas Jefferson. I mean, should we jettison his accomplishments as well? Picky little men and women, pusillanimous pipsqueaks the lot, who take it upon themselves to sit in judgment as such a giant of free and independent thinking? Is this where we're at? What do we do with the document he wrote? It must be coming from him. It has to be flawed. He's a seriously flawed individual. What's next? The Constitution? Well, I mean, look, our legislative branch, our executive branch, our judicial branch have ignored the Constitution for years. Why do they keep up the charade that it is our guiding document and the foundation of the rule of law? It's just a bothersome piece of paper to our enlightened leaders. Whatever happened to the servant leader? But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Jesus said that, Matthew 23:11. Well, look, the United States passed from republic to empire long before our lifetimes. It only now becomes evident to those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear. And we can be sure that we will tread the path of every great empire before us and march ourselves directly into oblivion. There's no turning back now. Look, we're on the way. We went through all the Confederate leaders. We tore down their statues. We went through Lincoln. We're up to Jefferson now. I mean, what's left? So let's talk about Jefferson. All right, I'm going to scooch around a little bit here. Hey, look, let me read you something JFK said. He had a meet or something at the White House. A room full of Nobel Prize winners were there that he had invited. And this is what he said. Kind of tongue in cheek, but really, think about the truth that he's saying. Quote, I think this is the most extraordinary collection of talent of human knowledge that has ever been gathered together at the White House, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson dined alone. End quote. Do you understand that? JFK was saying that Jefferson was smarter than all these guys combined. These New York City Council people, the little bit of brain in Thomas Jefferson's end of his little finger dwarfs these idiots. Look, I could understand miscreants, radicals on the street with nothing better to do all day, ending up getting goaded into tearing down statues or whatever. These people have work to do. Their city is crumbling around them. They can't teach their kids. They can't keep violence out of the school. People are being killed in the streets, and they're worried about a statue of Thomas Jefferson. They can't do their jobs right while that statue's up there. I think there's two of them that complain. There's always a couple. So they're going to take it down. Thomas Jefferson, 188-year-old statue. Again, the guy was an intellectual giant. Look, if it wasn't for him, let me read something else here. The Declaration of Independence. Let's get into why Jefferson. Well, there were 5 individuals that were chosen to write it up, once the idea went forward. Jefferson, Adams, Franklin. I forget the other 2. They weren't as important. They were the big 3. But the lot fell to Jefferson to write the first draft. Why? Well, I think they knew. I think Franklin knew. I mean, Franklin, he was a smart guy. He was a pretty wise guy, but nobody had it like Jefferson. So they sent him home, told him to write the first draft. Made a few changes. 17 days later, they submitted it. Now, I want to read, we're all familiar with the beginning of it. Joe Biden might even remembers a few lines of it. But I want to point us to the very last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. And maybe you've never read it. Maybe you should. I'm going to paraphrase a little, but quote the important parts. So, Jefferson begins, "We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, before the judge of the world, in the name of the authority of the people, the colonies, solemnly publish and declare," and here it is, "that these united colonies," united colonies, "are of right ought, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, and independent states, free and independent states." The united colonies ought to be free and independent states, not one big nation, free and independent states. That is the basis of the Constitution. You might say, well, Jefferson didn't write the Constitution. Jefferson right there put forth the idea of federalism, which the Constitution was based on. Free and independent states, absolved from allegiance to the crown, and then he says it again, breaking all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain, to be totally dissolved. Now he says it again. And that as free and independent states, not one nation, free and independent states coming together voluntarily. They have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have right to. That is the basis of federalism. The independent states coming together and giving certain limited and delineated power to the federal government, but retaining all other rights and powers for the free and independent states. That's federalism. Genius. Where would we be without Jefferson? Yeah, where would the Constitution be without Jefferson's ideas? And in fact, he was one of the big proponents of the Bill of Rights. A number of these individuals were unwilling to sign on to the Constitution without a promise of a Bill of Rights. And Jefferson was one of them. To conclude, so we have the New York City Council who think they have the right to sit in judgment. Again, they can't control their city. They are morons, mental midgets in the presence of a giant. They don't deserve to breathe the air in that room that wafts over the statue of Jefferson up above them. They shouldn't even be in that room. Well, again, we've been through the whole list of historical figures that we needed to destroy. All I can say is rest in peace to the grand experiment in self-governance. It was a good run while it lasted, the retelling of which will possibly inspire some future generation, within whom once again the smoldering embers of liberty break out into open flame. All right, thanks for listening today.